but the conductors themselves have never really been tested. So like you said, there's tons of strike length of these things that we've identified that have never been drilled. So that's true for Wishbone and McNee. Like I said, it covers more than 10 kilometers of these conductors strike, and there's uranium showings all the way along it. And like I said, we ground truth some of these, got some good grades back right at surface in these graphitic rocks, which is pretty exceptional. You don't usually get to see that in the basin. So that got us really excited. And then, yeah, we drilled Wishbone for the first time ever. And then along strike to the northeast, McNee remains undrilled.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Standard Uranium Vice President of Exploration, Sean Hilliker. Sean, very good to speak with you. You've released initial assays from your 2024 exploration program at the Sundog Uranium Project, and they look positive, up to 13% uranium. Take us through some of the highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. So we took these samples ahead of our summer drill program this year in 2024. We got up there. The main point of this was to really ground truth some of these historical showings. And then we also discovered new showings of uranium right at surface. So we took samples from that and just got those back from the lab. And like you said, we got some high grade assays up to 13%. So it really highlights the potential of the Sundog project, and especially these new target areas that we've identified, being Wishbone, McNee, which are along strike from each other, covering about 10 kilometers of these graphitic conductors that we're targeting, and then Spring Dome, which has been drilled historically up to the northwest, but there's a brand new untested target area there with some of these high grade assays. So really puts us in a good position to continue exploration here with our partners at Arrow Energy.
Sean, before we get into that partnership with Aero Energy, I mean, you say in the release that the targets tested just a small fraction of the entire ground at Sundog. So there's a lot of unrealized potential there.
Absolutely. You know, we ran a new electromagnetic an EM survey at the beginning of this year ahead of drilling as well. So, you know, really identifying these conductors, like I said, these trends that we're looking for, and applying, you know, kind of the classic high grade Athabasca style exploration model to this project, which hasn't really been done. It's all been, you know, Beaver Lodge style, you know, lots in granites and these kind of offshoots of faults and fractures along these conductors, but the conductors themselves have never really been tested. So like you said, there's tons of strike length of these things that we've identified that have never been drilled. So that's true for Wishbone and McNee. Like I said, it covers more than 10 kilometers of these conductors strike, and there's uranium showings all the way along it. And like I said, we ground truth some of these, got some good grades back right at surface in these graphitic rocks, which is pretty exceptional. You don't usually get to see that in the basin. So that got us really excited. And then, yeah, we drilled Wishbone for the first time ever. And then along strike to the northeast, McNee remains undrilled. So we've got a lot of ground to cover and a lot of room to run on this project still. So we're really excited to get back in 2025 with Arrow. They've just committed to year two. So that'll be another $2 million into the ground on this project next year. So really excited about that. And then, like I said, Spring Dome as well, which is has a lot of potential that hasn't been tapped yet.
And you are planning additional geophysics so you can identify more targets, is that correct? Or define more targets rather?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done a few different surveys on the project. Like I said, we covered the entire project with this EM survey that I mentioned, which was a new high resolution survey. So this project hasn't really seen that. You know, little patchwork surveys over the previous years before we took ownership of it. So it's nice to kind of get a high res survey across the whole thing, and then we like to layer that with other surveys. So we're planning some gravity work to hopefully identify some alteration halos along these conductors. So it really helps us to layer things up and stack these surveys to, you know, prioritize and identify the best targets to go spend money on drilling. So that's what that's going to do. So we're looking to start that right away here at the end of 2024 into the 2025, and then follow that up with more drilling next year.
So as you take those next steps, the sort of news flow that your investors should be looking out for?
Absolutely. So we got these prospecting results back from the lab, but we're still waiting on the final groups from the drilling that we did this summer. So we should have the rest of those back in the next week or two. We'll process that, run it through our QA/QC process in-house, crunch all the numbers, and then we'll put out those assays for the public to check out pretty soon here before the end of the year. And then we'll also be launching on these additional geophysics programs, like you mentioned, and then announce drilling when that comes in. Hopefully a winter program, perhaps followed by another summer program as well. So there will be lots of news flow to look forward to. And so yeah, keep checking in with us and our partners at Arrow.
Well, I'm sure we're going to be chatting again soon then, Sean. Thank you very much for the update today.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
That's Shaun Hilliker. He's Standard Uranium Vice President of Exploration.